2024 is the year of building your personal brand. I'm not talking about getting followers. I'm not talking about creating your resume. I'm talking about crafting a story about you and your life so strong that people know you for it and you get paid to simply be yourself.
And what you really want to do is build a strong personal brand to set yourself up for long-term success.
So yeah, if using social media to build an online presence and personal brand wasn't on your list of goals in 2024, I'm gonna need you to go ahead and add that.
Contrary to popular belief, no, you don't always need a personal brand and you can just live your life. Today, we are back and we are talking about the phenomenon that is the branding and monetization of our everyday personalities, both on and offline. And this video is an extension of a previous video that I posted talking about the rise of aesthetics and microtrends and how those have affected and impacted the way we connect with people and our personalities. And I mentioned as an aside in that video that there's also a phenomenon that we as Gen Z and Millennials and people that have grown up with the internet have been going through, where we feel like we constantly need to be branding ourselves or be like living in our own personal brands, essentially performing for others so that they know what we're all about and like how we can connect with others in a less than authentic kind of way. Why did I say authentic like that? Am I giving New York? And I think that this is a really interesting topic because it's something that like we don't necessarily talk about in this way. I feel like when we generally have conversations around authenticity, both on and offline, we kind of stop it at like just the general catch-all of like social media, and that we all kind of perform and like act fake on social media. But I feel like we often don't bring that forward into the conversation of why that is. And I feel like it really does come down to the whole fact that we are all trying to have this performance of having a personal brand that we are projecting towards other people. That is, for one, very limiting to who we are as people and does not really allow for a lot of organic change. Referencing you changing who you are as a person as a rebrand and going about that change as such instead of just finding out different interests. Because for one, I feel like rebrands require different stages and are very intentional, whereas just human nature and like having different interests is very fluid and organic. And two, having like a whole personal brand for your life is just like a lot of pressure. And we're gonna get into all this and have a nice little chat. But before we do that, if you are new to the channel and like content like this, then definitely hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any content that comes out on this channel. Also, don't forget to leave a like because that helps out a ton with the YouTube algorithm. And you can follow me on my socials at Imurgency on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. I've been in my very active era over on there, so you should definitely go check out those platforms to get a vibe. And if you like early access to every single one of these videos, as well as 2 additional exclusive videos, then consider hitting the join button and becoming a channel member today. I have a Blood and Water TV show review coming out later next week, and there's a whole catalog of show reviews that I've done in the past, so consider that. But let's talk about the monetization and branding of personalities nowadays. Now, like I've been saying before, I've been noticing a slight rise in sentiments online where people feel like they need to either already have or like establish a personal brand for themselves. And no, when I say brand, I don't mean business necessarily, but more so this concrete vibe or aesthetic that people keep themselves in order to essentially describe themselves to other people, sell themselves to people in a more streamlined and easy way. And typically when you think of like branding and like things having to do with like personal brand, you think of like businesses, you think of entrepreneurs, you think of freelancers, you think of influencers who all have to have their own personal brands to sell things to people. And for those groups, yes, personal branding is really important as a way to identify and differentiate themselves from other brands in the market, other brands that are selling or marketing things to other people. But what's interesting is that I feel like we've been seeing that transition into just everyday speak with everyday regular people. Like we have people that work regular 9-to-5 jobs talking about having a personal brand. We have people that aren't even old enough or qualified enough to be working yet talking about having a personal brand, which leads to the first question: what is a personal brand? What is branding? When we're talking about people's personalities and likeness. And according to the Harvard Business Review, which yes, we're using the Harvard Business Review because that is typically where branding is being talked about, they describe a personal brand as how you want people to see you, saying that it's about visibility and the values that you outwardly represent, which is in contrast to a reputation, which consists of first impressions and how others see you. The difference there being your reputation being something that you don't have as much control over, whereas a personal brand is something that you are explicitly crafting for other people to show them how you want them to see you. And I think that want piece is so interesting because when we think about it in the context of social media, that is essentially what social media is. Like we build these pages, whether we want to be influencers or not, or just have social media to connect with our friends and family. A lot of that is just us showing a highlight reel, showing other people what we want them to see about us. Essentially making our social media platforms our own personal brand, whether or not we're trying to sell something or market something to someone. or not. And my theory is I think that that is what causes a lot of the stress and pressure that people face when it comes to like posting things online. Again, not even for the sake of going viral or for like likes and clicks or things, like just posting in general for your friends and family. Like there is so much pressure and stress around like posting on Instagram or like posting on TikTok because you get caught up in trying to decipher whether or not you look cool or like mysterious or like fun enough. And a lot of times we become hypercritical of how we show up online to our circles. Like we feel this need to upkeep this fictitious brand that we've set out for ourselves on our own pages. Like even for me, being a creator, I feel so much stress and pressure still from posting. Like on Instagram, if I'm posting something, I am fleeing the app with the quickness. You will not see me. I don't care how fast you comment, I will not see it because I will be out that app the second I press post. And it's always been like that for me even before I started doing this as a full-time gig. Like I feel like there's just so much pressure to show up in a certain way, both online and offline, that it's gotten a little ridiculous. Like I've asked my friends about this and they all say the same thing. Like it's stressful to post online no matter who you are, whether or not you're in it to post for the world or just for your friends and family.
Okay, so like, I don't know if this is like me like overthinking, but I feel like as it pertains to like us as people, even if we're not like influencers, we have a brand that we try to maintain. Like everyone has things that like they're known for, regardless of if they're cognizant of that or not. And I feel like of the people who are like aware of like, yes, you have a social brand, that kind of like filters over into, that was not the word I meant to use, but anyway, it like pours over into their social media and their social media presence. So like me, for example, I know in real life, I dress very like gothic, goth, alt, whatever, but that doesn't necessarily like translate on my social media. Like if you look at like half of my Instagram, I'm like wearing like bright colors or just like not in my typical day-to-day dress, or the fact that I literally wear glasses and based on my Instagram page, like you wouldn't know that about me. So sometimes I'm like on my page, I'm like, like, is this goth enough? And that's like something that goes through my head when I post, because I know like how I can present myself in real life doesn't necessarily convey on Instagram. And for me, at least, I think like my style is a very integral part of my identity, and the fact that I do like to be seen as like a little bit more gothic, but that doesn't really portray on my Instagram, I feel like that's something that I'm aware of when I post.
Like, I feel like the encroachment of like public perception and the need to be on brand with yourself has really started to change the landscape both on and offline. And now I'm going to take sort of a step out of what I was just talking about, but it'll make sense, I hope. But I feel like we've gotten to a point with the whole personal branding and figuring out how to show up with people of it all, where we've noticed that this may be an issue or this may be something to note and talk about. And we've started to become a little bit more intentional about not falling into those thought patterns, not falling into having to like stay 100% on brand on social media. But in that, there's also been this push to not directly monetize everything about yourself or intentionally align all of the things that you do for the sake of staying on brand. Because I feel like there was like this really big push to like not monetize your hobby. And I think this is a big thing because of the rise of like gig culture, side hustle culture. There was and still currently is a time where people just kind of see their hobbies as ways that they can make money, or just taking things that they generally normally enjoy and turning it into some way to capitalize on it, whether that be financially, socially, what have you. Like a crucial part of what people say when they talk about personal branding is showing people who you are and what you do in a quick way. And part of that usually lends itself to your hobbies, because your hobbies and passions are part of who you are and what you do. And I feel like when people look at hobbies this way, it just changes how they describe and talk about them. Like instead of being someone who likes going to the gym, you become a gym rat, you become a fitness guru or whatever. Instead of being someone who enjoys journaling or writing, you are a writer. Instead of being someone who enjoys spending time in coffee shops and going to coffee shops, you become a coffee shop connoisseur. Like they need to place these labels, which oftentimes are also used to describe full-fledged careers, not only puts pressure on the hobby because it becomes less of a casual thing that you just do, but it can also ruin what makes them special. Like speaking from experience, I've recently, and I am hesitant to say this because I don't want to like start monetizing my hobby or whatever, but like I've recently started running again as a hobby because I've been desperate to find hobbies, because I've started to realize that when I'm not working or just taking care of my daily routines, I have nothing. So I've been desperately trying to find hobbies. And one of the things that I've landed on is running. I've been picking up running again. I used to run back in high school. Never really finished a season of running while I was in high school because I'd always figure out a way to injure myself incredibly unseriously. But I've picked up running again. It's been something that I've really been enjoying and also something that I've been keeping to myself. Like I think this is the first time that I've actually publicly spoke on this hobby because I've been trying to be really intentional about like not monetizing it, not vlogging it, not posting about it, not making it a thing where I become a runner and just what I do. And just part of what I do is being a runner and have that be part of my brand. So when people think of me, they think of me as like a runner and someone who's super fit and active, and all these brands will hit me up for like running things. Like, no, I've been trying to keep this for me. I've been trying to enjoy this for me because at the end of the day, it's a hobby, not a means to gain social or monetary capital. And I think that's so important because that keeps it fun. Like I honestly feel like if I were to double down into it and really start to publicize it and talk about it and make it and incorporate it more in my online and offline life, it would become less fun for me because then it would become more of a task than something that I do to just simply enjoy it. Another example of this, and I don't want y'all to feel some type of way about this, but that's sort of what happened with me with show reviews, like watching TV. Like back before I did TV show reviews, I used to watch TV as a form of escape. I used to watch it as a hobby. I used to watch it as a form of simply enjoyment. But as I started monetizing it, as I started using it and incorporating it in my own personal brand, I stopped going to it as a form of relaxation, as like my own hobby, and started seeing it more as an intentional thing, as a part of my job, as a way to continue my brand, which made me enjoy it. I don't want to say enjoy it less, but the source of enjoyment of it changed. Not to say that I don't like watching TV anymore, or that I don't like watching shows for the reviews that I make, but it's just different now. It's not solely for me anymore. It's something that I do myself for the intent of sharing with others. And I think that is the crux of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about not monetizing your hobbies, not using your hobbies as a way to develop your personal brand, because it becomes more of a performance and more of something that you do to show other people or to share with other people than it is to enjoy fully for yourself, if that makes sense. And now I'm going to talk more about this later, but I do want to just say as a note at the end of that point that I want to acknowledge that I know that a lot of people do this out of a necessity and as a way of trying to make more money through like side hustles and stuff, because there are very real reasons why people are really subscribed to the whole personal branding of it all, monetizing whatever they find enjoyment out of, because times are hard, and in many cases people are kind of forced to brand their personalities in order to have social mobility and to put food on the table. And we're going to get more into that when we look at why people are doing this in the first place. Was that a good transition? Was it tea? Was it cute? It was all right, but gassing up anyway, please. I need it. But the first reason I feel like this is just so prevalent is because of the constant surveillance society that we currently live in. We are currently in an era where everything is being recorded at all times, whether intentionally or not. Like going outside for a day or for a night out, especially if you happen to live in a more densely populated area like a city or like a downtown, you are bound to end up in the background of somebody's video or picture or a voice memo in the background, just from simply existing out in public, which is just to be expected because everyone always has their phones out and is always recording something. There are always security cameras recording stuff. Like the fact that you could just be walking throughout your day and a car with a little radar spinning on it can drive past you and you find yourself documented on Google Maps for the next like 5 to 10 years is insane. But even in the more explicit cases of someone actually pulling out their phone to record you, there is this pressure to always perform and to always bring your best self. And if you do happen to be caught in public being your most authentic self, not really caring, you could end up on social media, and there's a fear of that. And I feel like that's contributing to why we see like things like nightlife and club culture be on a decline, because people are afraid to let loose and be who they are outside of these manicured brands that they have for themselves, because people and the internet can be cruel to people that are authentically themselves and they'll be put online for it. So although this personal branding thing has stemmed from stuff that has happened online, it does trickle down into real life as well. Like it goes back to the whole meme, I don't know if y'all have seen it, but like that lady that's like bouncing in the club being like, be mindful of why you're invited to the section. You know, like the first clip she's like, hey! And then like, don't do that. And the second clip she's like, acting all calm, cool, and collected, which I personally found so funny. And I made recreation of that meme, and the girlies just did not get it. When I posted it, they thought I was being so dead ass and they were trying to chew me up in the comments. So maybe it was not as funny as I thought it was. But if you think it was, you should go over to my Instagram and comment to go and even out the comments. So, you know, just saying. But that speaks on the pressures that people experience when they're out in public. Like it is incentivized for you to act a certain way, to act within certain parameters, to not draw unnecessary attention to yourself, so that you're not being seen as like a interruption or something that's just weird and out the box. And even in spaces where that should be expected, you know? Like, it keeps people from having fun. It keeps them from being themselves out of fear of being documented and put on the internet forever. I think I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but this is all to say that the hypervisibility of everything due to constant surveillance can be a contributing factor for why we're seeing such a strong pull towards having these personal brands and living within these confines of personality, if that makes sense. The second reason has to do with influencers and corporations. In addition to living in a surveillance society, we also live in a society where influencers are everywhere online. And I'm one of them. And if you're watching this video, you've been got. I hate to say it. You have been got. We see influencers and companies talking about their branding all the time. And from the corporation side, and you see people online talking about how important it is to have a brand and to make sure you are branded correctly so that you can get ahead in life. That we've gotten to a point where corporations and social media companies are moving under the guise and motive of making everyone a influencer, everyone a creator, and to some extent through moves like encouraging everyone on their platforms to create content and to make the barrier of entry to creating content as low as it's ever been. Because if everyone's creating content and everyone's technically a content creator, there's more of a financial benefit for these corporations and companies. But in that means that like, if everyone is an influencer or content creator, then everyone needs a brand. Right? Well, no, but that's the sentiment that's being felt, because if everyone's being treated like a creator online, then everyone feels like they need to have their own personal brand as well to coincide with that. And then there's the whole thing which I was talking about earlier of like turning every aspect of our lives into a hustle or way to make money. For a lot of adult Gen Z, even teenage Gen Z, and especially adult millennials, times are hard and it's encouraged to find any way to make money. With the way that jobs are set up right now, it's very hard to have a sustainable living with only one job, meaning that most people either have a second job or have one or multiple side hustles going along to help supplement those funds. Because our bills have all been affected. Like, let's be real, times are really hard right now. And for a lot of Gen Z and millennials over the past couple of years, we've experienced a lot of layoffs from those stable, higher paying jobs or just jobs, period. Like a lot of companies, especially companies that require a degree for a job, have been cutting a lot of talent. And as I've talked about in previous videos, I've been affected by this. I've been laid off before, and I've only been out of college for coming up on 2 years now. Good paying jobs are harder to get now. And to make ends meet, a lot of people are getting into the side hustle economy of starting their own business, their own service, or just like finding some other way to make ends meet. And in that, there is a push to have a personal brand so that you're able to actually sell things to other people and have people know what you do and what services or products you offer, essentially to sell yourself. And in those cases, it's completely understandable why you need a personal brand, because you do need to make money in that way. But I feel like there is a differentiation between doing that for work and then just living life outside of the confines of your own personal brand. But even though times right now are kind of difficult and different from times of the past, it's important to note that like when it comes to people branding themselves online and bringing that offline into who they are as people, that piece right there is not necessarily new. We've seen like this IRL branding based off of stuff that we've seen on social media through different personas and individuals since the beginning of social media and social networking. Like this can go back honestly all the way back to the days of like MySpace and Facebook and all of those eras. In fact, there's actually been a little bit of research done in this specifically. In a dissertation by Michelle Beaver dating all the way back to 2007, talking about online social networks and the role of media in digital identity, she essentially writes about a similar phenomenon that was going on with early social networking sites like MySpace and Facebook, where people would sort of co-opt these identities that they form for themselves online as a way to sort of establish these identities and then bring these identities as a form of cultural and social identifier in the real world. Saying that online, one can eventually express and shape a different version of him or her identity due to the flexibility of the profiles online. Our offline identities inevitably change and shape around the sign vehicles we use to negotiate our online impression management, such as using media directly on our pages as well as discussing our interests as a description of ourselves. And while this research looks more to do with how people back then having their online and offline personas, it does so show that time and time again people are using what they post online and seeing what's being posted online to sort of establish these personality traits that they can then use to identify themselves to other people through what she called then a digital persona, but what we call now a personal brand. Now, with all that said, is this necessarily harmful? Well, again, No. Like, there's nothing explicitly wrong with having a personal brand, with wanting to have a succinct way to describe your personality and yourself to others. The one main thing about it is that it really does sort of play with what is and is not authentic to you and to others. The need for everyone to have this forward-facing brand kind of takes away from the authenticity of getting to know someone yourself and deciding whether or not you actually enjoy a person for who they are, in my opinion. Like, yes, it makes it easier on the surface level to weed out who you would be compatible with and who you wouldn't based on how they present themselves as a brand. But a lot of times what people are presenting themselves as is not necessarily 100% who they actually are as people, which means that in terms of connection, there are a lot of misconnections because people are thinking, oh, I wouldn't get along with so-and-so because of their aesthetic or because of the way that they are on social media. Like, I don't think I'd really be compatible with that. Whole time, y'all could have been besties because y'all both lying. Oh, well, not lying, but like either exaggerating or underplaying different parts of your personality for the sake of presentation for others. Which makes me feel that in terms of authenticity, we're living in a time where we're substituting personality for presentation. I didn't come up with that myself. That was in an article, but they kind of ate with that, so I wanted to use that. So, and even for people whose like whole brand is authenticity, you never really know whether or not those people are actually authentic because of the oversaturation of authentic brands online. Like, there are a ton of regular people and influencers online that try and say that they're super authentic and relatable and real until a couple of years down the line when it gets exposed that they are actually nothing like what they're presenting themselves to be online. It makes you kind of think, like, what is authenticity online? How do we define that, and what actually is it, you know? But when it comes offline, I think it's okay to be more vulnerable, genuine, and authentic face to face because it's harder to hide then. Like, yes, you have your own personal brand that you bring out to people, but like when you let down your walls and let people in and have like those actual genuine interpersonal connections, I feel like that is where the actual authenticness really does come from. Like, sure, a polished personal brand will get you opportunities and professional success, but I feel like we're sort of moving towards an era of valuing more authenticity and valuing more realness. So I think we just need to start giving that and valuing that. But yeah, those are all the thoughts I got right now. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Do you think I've just been yapping for all this time and I'm not making any sense? Or do you see yourself or others in this? Like, do you feel like you have to upkeep a personal brand in your day-to-day life for other people or for work or for whatever? Or do you try to live a more authentic and offline sort of life? I doubt that's many of you, because if you were like me at all and you are the target audience, you were just as chronically online as I am. So, maybe not that. But let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, if you're new to the channel, then definitely subscribe, leave a like on this video, follow me on my socials at Imurgency on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. But other than that, y'all, I have an emergency and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.